It's a really strange thing to just look down at your own hand sometimes and realize you're physically made of the exact same carbon, the exact same dust as the dirt in your backyard.
Oh, absolutely. It's wild.
But then, using that very same physical carbon-based brain, you can sit there and somehow contemplate the infinite edge of the universe.
Right. I mean, it is the ultimate tension of the human condition. We are entirely finite, completely bound by physical laws.
Gravity, decay, all of that.
Exactly. But we still have this unyielding, almost haunting obsession with the infinite. It's like we are literally dust that just dreams of eternity.
Well, welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're opening up a really fascinating collection of ancient biblical wisdom texts and spiritual scrolls.
And there is a lot to unpack here.
There really is.
Yeah.
Our mission in this deep dive is to decode how these ancient sources use surprisingly modern metaphors like radio frequencies, biological antennas, hidden mathematical patterns.
Which is crazy for ancient texts, by the way.
Right. And this whole idea that human consciousness is basically just a receiver for cosmic broadcasts.
Yeah, and it completely reframes how we look at our own search for meaning. Because these texts, they don't treat human consciousness as just some random evolutionary byproduct.
No, not at all.
They present a literal architecture of reality, like an invisible framework that dictates how our thoughts and these spiritual forces interact with our physical biology.
And the sources really anchor this whole framework in this beautiful line from Ecclesiastes. It says that the Creator, who the Hebrew texts call Elohim, has made man from the dust of the earth, but placed eternity in their hearts.
I love that phrasing, eternity in their hearts.
It's so poetic. Man instinctively searches the heavens, right? But he can't actually find out the work that's been done from beginning to end.
Which is incredibly frustrating.
It is. It's kind of like having the most advanced, unimaginably complex piece of software installed directly into your brain.
But no user manual.
Exactly. Whoever installed it forgot to leave you the administrative password. You have the hardware to process the data, and you intrinsically feel like there's a source code dictating the universe, but you just don't have access to read it.
You only catch the echoes of it. And, for anyone listening to this right now who has ever felt just completely overwhelmed by the sheer deafening noise of modern life.
Which is, let's be honest, all of us.
Right. Or if you've ever felt this unexplainable pull toward a deeper meaning that you just can't articulate, these texts argue that you aren't going crazy. You're simply a receiver trying desperately to find the right broadcast in a world that is just filled with static.
Okay, so to understand what that broadcast actually is, we apparently have to start by looking outside of ourselves, right? At the invisible architecture of the physical world.
Yeah. The scrolls basically argue that creation doesn't just exist passively. It actually speaks. It has a literal language.
And the texts trace this all the way back to the Tower of Babel narrative in Genesis.
Right. So before humanity was scattered, the text says we shared a single, unified spoken language. But even after that confusion at Babel, a deeper language remained intact beneath all our words.
A hidden language.
Exactly. A hidden language of pattern, number, form, and vibration.
Which brings up Psalm 19, where it says, the heavens are declaring the glory of the Creator. It's proposing that the universe communicates through geometry and frequency.
Yeah, and if you've never looked into cymatics, you really should.
Oh man, cymatics is so cool. It's the study of visible sound, right?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds mystical, but it's highly observable physical science. You basically take a metal plate, cover it in fine sand or dust, and drag a violin bow along the edge.
And the sound wave travels right through the metal.
Right, and the vibration literally forces those chaotic, random particles of dust into perfectly ordered, symmetrical, geometric mandalas.
The invisible frequency suddenly takes on a visible physical shape. It's mind-blowing to watch.
It really is. And the texts emphasize that when earthly frequencies interact with matter, they frequently settle into six-fold hexagonal patterns, like a honeycomb.
So the scroll uses this natural phenomenon to establish a baseline. The Creator is an author of deliberate design, not chaos. The physical earth is actively testifying to this through order.
But, and this is a huge but, the text throws a massive curveball right after establishing that.
Oh yeah, this part threw me.
It emphasizes that these physical six-fold patterns As beautiful as the honeycomb is, they belong to a creation that's inherently temporary.
They're just the watermark of an Earth that will eventually pass away. They aren't the eternal pattern.
Right, because when the text shifts to describing the ultimate eternal pattern, it points to the book of Revelation, the famous vision of the final city descending from heaven.
And its geometry is totally different.
Entirely different. It is not a hexagonal honeycomb. It is described as a perfect cube. Its length, its breadth, and its height are exactly equal.
Okay, I have to admit, when I first read this in the sources, I totally pushed back on it.
Really?
Because think about it. A honeycomb feels organic. It's natural. It breathes. It's made by living creatures. A giant, perfectly symmetrical cube sounds incredibly rigid.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, it sounds artificial, almost like the Borg from Star Trek or some brutalist concrete office building. Why would the ultimate divine reality of heaven be a sterile cube?
Well, that reaction makes total sense for a modern mind. We equate right angles with human-made industrialization, but you have to view this through the lens of ancient Near Eastern temple architecture.
Okay, lay it on me.
So, in the ancient Temple of Israel, the structure was divided into different courts, but the deepest, most sacred inner chamber, the Holy of Holies, was the literal dwelling place of the Creator's presence on earth.
Right.
And historically, that room was built as a perfect 20 by 20 by 20 cubic cube.
Oh, wow. Okay, that completely shifts the context. It isn't a sci-fi prison at all.
Not even a little bit. The cube represents absolute, uncompromising perfection and ultimate communion. So when Revelation describes the final eternal city as a massive cube, it's a profound architectural statement.
It's saying the veil is gone.
Exactly. The barrier between the physical earth and the divine realm is entirely removed. The entire city has become the Holy of Holies. Heaven has fully descended to dwell with men.
The geometry of absolute presence. I love that. But, okay, that makes sense of the external universe, but it brings us to a much more immediate problem for you and me.
Which is?
Well, if the entire universe is built on these vibrational patterns, and eternity is constantly broadcasting this hidden language, how do I, sitting in my living room or stuck in morning traffic, actually interact with it? I'm not a tuning fork.
Right, and this is where the ancient metaphors become strikingly modern. The text shifts from the external architecture of the cosmos right to our internal biological hardware.
It basically describes the human mind as a complex radio receiver.
Yes. The imagery paints the human spine as a biological antenna stretching from the dust of the earth up toward the heavens, with the mind sitting right at the apex to catch the signals.
And the text actually acknowledges that several Eastern traditions refer to this rising energy current in the spine, right? Calling it kundalini or serpent power.
It does, but these scrolls completely reframe that concept. They argue that the focus shouldn't be on the biological antenna itself or trying to magically awaken it.
Right, because it's really about what specific signal that antenna is catching.
Exactly. According to these sources, there are really only two cosmic broadcasts competing for the human heart. Two frequencies and absolutely no neutral ground.
Okay, so let's break those down. The first one is identified as the serpent frequency.
Yeah. The scrolls pull from the book of James here, describing a specific type of wisdom that is earthly, sensual, and demonic.
It whispers exclusively to the flesh and the ego.
Constantly. It promises survival, pride, power, fulfilling your base appetites, supreme self-exaltation. It's the exact same broadcast that played in the Garden of Eden narrative.
Whispering that ultimate deception, you shall be like Elohim.
The original ego trip.
Totally. The promise that you can be your own God, define your own morality, serve only yourself.
And notice how the text frames the entity in the garden. It explicitly says the serpent wasn't necessarily a literal reptile with physical scales slithering around the grass.
Right. It didn't conquer humanity through brute physical force.
No, the serpent was a mind. It was an adversary that conquered entirely through information, persuasion, and a corrupted mental frequency. Basically, it hacked the receiver.
Man, if we follow the logic of these scrolls to its natural conclusion, we hit a genuinely unsettling concept.
That's sad.
Are these texts suggesting we don't actually generate all of our own thoughts? Like, if our brains are basically biological Bluetooth speakers playing whatever cosmic Wi-Fi network we're connected to, then the concept of suddenly feeling an overwhelming wave of anxiety or a sudden spike of unwarranted arrogance takes on a totally different, terrifying meaning.
It is a sobering paradigm. The text literally states, every thought you receive is a signal, and the mind becomes shaped by the station it listens to.
Wow.
So this suggests you aren't necessarily the author of every dark, anxious, or hypercritical thought in your head. You might simply be tuned into the lower broadcast. You're just catching the ambient static of the serpent frequency.
Which makes the existence of the second frequency our only real lifeline, the spirit frequency.
Exactly. And this broadcast descends entirely from above. It does not glorify the flesh or try to dominate others.
Returning to James, it describes this higher frequency as clean, peaceable, gentle, full of compassion and good fruits.
It produces humility and objective truth. The scrolls assert this is the exact frequency the Messiah Yahushua in the Hebrew texts operated in.
Right, when he told his followers, the words that I speak to you are spirit and they are life.
So we are looking at an absolute invisible war occurring constantly in the unseen realm. But the actual battlefield is the human mind.
The flesh desires what is contrary to the spirit and vice versa.
And whoever wins that daily war of attention claims you as a citizen of their kingdom.
So if you stay tuned to the serpent frequency, you become a citizen of the earth. Your hopes, fears, your whole perceived reality is permanently bound to the dust.
But if you tune into the spirit frequency, you become a citizen of the heavens. You start operating on a wisdom the physical world just cannot teach.
Okay, but, and I'm putting myself in the listener's shoes here.
Yeah.
If my brain is just this passive antenna catching signals, I feel entirely helpless. I can't just unplug my brain to stop the static.
Right.
So how do I actually turn the dial? How do I lock onto the spirit?
Well, the scrolls are remarkably clear about the mechanism here. They identify the dial on your mental radio as the eye.
The eye, like physical vision.
More like perception. They draw directly from the Messiah's words in Matthew. The lamp of the body is the eye. The psychological concept is that whatever you focus your attention on determines the light of your entire being.
Your focus is the gateway of the mind.
Exactly.
And the text points out that modern culture, which is heavily driven by that serpent frequency, constantly promotes what they call a divided eye.
Yes, keeping one eye on truth or morality while keeping the other eye firmly fixed on worldly ambitions, wealth, pride.
Which creates what James calls the double-minded man. Someone who is unstable in all their ways.
Because the serpent frequency actually thrives on this specific kind of mixture. It doesn't need you to be purely cartoonishly evil.
Right.
It just wants to blend good and evil together so thoroughly in your daily life that you lose the ability to tell the difference.
And we see this mixture everywhere. Think about how modern hustle culture or like toxic elements of the self-care movement operate.
Oh, totally.
The lower frequency doesn't tell you to go actively harm people. It just tells you to prioritize your own comfort and status so much that you become a total narcissist. It masks toxic pride under the guise of healthy boundaries.
It's such a subtle deception.
It really is. It's like, okay, it's like trying to drive a car down the highway at 70 miles an hour while continuously looking down at your phone.
That is exactly what it's like.
You convince yourself you have a divided eye. You think, I'm keeping one eye on the road and one on my screen. But the neurological reality is you aren't seeing either thing clearly.
Right.
The mixture makes you completely blind to the semi-truck slamming its brakes directly in front of you.
And taking that driving analogy a step further, the moment you realize you're in danger, you don't try to look at your phone better.
No.
You drop the distraction entirely. And this perfectly explains why the text so forcefully rejects the New Age concept of trying to open a hidden third eye.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, people are constantly seeking out secret magical sight or psychic powers. But pursuing a third eye is just another elaborate distraction engineered by the serpent frequency. It keeps you looking inward at your own perceived divinity.
So true awakening, according to these sources, has nothing to do with the secret third eye.
Nothing at all. True awakening is achieving the single eye, taking your fragmented, distracted vision and purifying it until it's fixed entirely on the Creator.
Like Psalm 16 says, I have set the Lord always before me. When your eye becomes single, the noise of the serpent just loses its grip on your consciousness.
You aren't actively fighting the noise anymore. You've fundamentally changed the channel.
You've tuned the dial.
Oh.
But, and here's a million-dollar question, knowing you need to change the channel and actually having the spiritual strength to do it are two very different things.
Extremely different. Which brings us to a really critical juncture in the ancient texts. What happens to the person who has been living with a divided eye for decades?
Yeah, what if you've been tuned to the serpent frequency for so long that the poison of earthly pride, anxiety, and endless appetite has thoroughly infected your mind?
Well, the scrolls present a historical and spiritual remedy for this infection that is, honestly, shocking in its paradox. To cure the venom of the serpent mind, they take us all the way back to the wilderness with Moses.
Right, the Israelites wandering in the desert.
Yeah, they rebel, and they find themselves being bitten by these fiery serpents. The venom is lethal, and people are literally dying.
But pay attention to what Moses does here, because he doesn't invent an anti-venom. He doesn't go foraging for a medicinal herb.
No.
The Creator instructs Moses to forge a bronze serpent, attach it to a pole, and lift it high up into the air for the entire camp to see. And the promise is stunningly simple. Anyone who has been bitten just has to look at the bronze serpent, and they will live.
This is one of the most profound paradoxes in the entire biblical narrative. Think about it. The very symbol of the curse, the literal image of their destruction, is repurposed into the exact instrument of their healing.
It is incredibly counterintuitive. If I'm dying from a snake bite, the absolute last thing I want to look at is a giant metal snake.
Right. But the text immediately connects this historical event to the Messiah.
Oh, the verse in John.
Exactly. Yahushua explicitly says, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the Son of Man has to be lifted up.
So the Messiah essentially takes the serpent nature, the curse itself, the fleshly wisdom, all that toxic mental static, and takes it upon himself on the execution stake to defeat it from the inside out.
He becomes the ultimate remedy for the poison in the mind of man. By absorbing the fullness of that lower frequency's penalty and silencing it through his own sacrifice, the curse is broken.
The mechanics of this are just mind-blowing to me, because the remedy for the serpent's venom is looking at a deadened bronze version of the serpent itself.
Yeah.
That is exactly how a modern vaccine works.
Oh, wait, you're totally right.
To create a vaccine, scientists take an attenuated or deadened version of the exact virus that's killing people. It has the external structure of the threat, but the internal RNA that causes the disease has been neutralized.
That structural parallel is perfect.
Right. You introduce that deadened version into the body, and it triggers the immune system to recognize the threat and achieve ultimate victory.
Wow. The bronze serpent has the form of the deadly thing, but none of the venom.
Exactly.
And the Messiah takes on the likeness of human flesh, the very domain where the serpent frequency operates. But he harbors none of the sin or the venom.
And by focusing their eyes, using that single eye of faith we discussed, to look upon the lifted up curse, the people are spiritually inoculated against the death it caused.
It is an ancient spiritual text perfectly mirroring the mechanics of modern biology and immunology. It's brilliant.
It takes all these massive abstract concepts, cosmic frequencies, biological antennas, the single eye, and it grounds them in a visceral life or death action.
Yeah. You are infected by the serpent's broadcast. The world has poisoned your perception.
So you direct your single eye to the Messiah, who took the serpent's curse upon himself. And by fixing your focus there, the venom in your own mind loses its power to destroy you.
The static clears. Your receiver is finally tuned back to the tree of life.
And that choice of tuning is really the central thesis of these ancient scrolls. We are constantly surrounded by the deafening noise of the world, right? Bombarded by philosophies that exalt the self.
Driven by base desires that just pull our consciousness straight downward to the dust.
Yet the spirit is continually calling upward, broadcasting this steady frequency of peace, objective truth, and genuine eternal life.
So bringing this directly to you, the listener, as you go about the rest of your day, you are going to be bombarded by noise.
Unavoidably. It'll come from the endless notifications on your phone, the stress of your workplace.
The internal anxieties just whispering in your own mind.
But remember the framework we've explored today. There aren't a million different voices out there. There are really only two frequencies broadcasting.
The serpent or the spirit. The temporary dust of the earth or the eternal architecture of the celestial city.
Every single decision you make today, every passing thought you choose to entertain, every app you open and scroll through, it's the turning of the dial.
You ultimately become a naturalized citizen of the kingdom you habitually tune into.
But we want to leave you with one final thought to chew on today. Something that takes this entire framework of antennas and broadcasts and pushes it into the prophetic future.
Right. Because the scrolls mention that at the Tower of Babel, humanity began with one single unified language before the frequencies were scattered into chaos.
But it doesn't end there.
No. The prophet Zephaniah promises that this chaotic static is not the end of the human story. The text prophesies a future return to a clear lip, a pure, uncorrupted language of the heart that the Creator will eventually restore to all peoples.
Which is just wild to think about. If every thought is indeed a broadcast, and we're all just walking biological receivers with antennas stretching up to the sky, What exactly will human consciousness look like when the cosmic static is finally and permanently removed?
When the great adversary's broadcast is taken entirely off the air,
Yes. What happens when every single mind on Earth is tuned to the exact same pure spirit frequency without any interference?
will it result in the ultimate societal harmony? Or perhaps it will create a type of unified connection, like a deep, almost telepathic understanding that our currently divided, static-filled minds cannot even begin to fathom.
It is a wild, beautiful concept to consider. We might currently be walking around in finite bodies made of the dust of the Earth, but eventually the software is going to get its manual.
The eternal code will be fully readable from beginning to end.
Keep your dial tuned to the good stuff, keep your eyes single, and keep listening.